Hi, I'm Scott Fresener with T-Biz Network International, and I'm at the ISS trade show in Long Beach, and I'm an old guy, and hanging with people I know, and I joke that I could just stand in the aisle and somebody will walk by that we know. I've been doing this a long time. I've focused in the last 8 or 9 years on doing color separations, Photoshop training, but I'm also a pretty good screen printer. I've traveled the world doing consulting and been in big shops and small shops, and having a good time. I enjoy seeing younger guys entering the industry and some of them doing videos and training, and I think it's great. I feel like we're passing the baton a little bit to these guys. And I'm here today with Michael Chung, and Michael has some questions for me. Well, I'm the ultimate entrepreneur, meaning I've always felt that I was invincible, and when I was younger, my ideas were the best ideas. I think any entrepreneur feels that you're pretty smart and this is the newest thing, nobody's ever thought of this. And I'm the guy that could always take nothing, no money, because I started off with no money and I could market and run the business. But as you grow, you got to be careful. I think when you are the ultimate entrepreneur, then you don't think you can fail. And so failure is not an option in your mind. And you'll make decisions and you'll make them on the fly. And I like to joke I'm on Scott 4.0 right now, and I've made millions and lost millions. I've built companies and lost companies. And it is what it is. You got to move on, and the past is the past. But I think I was even going to write a book one time on business, that you make that one decision today that is in your business that may seem like the no-brainer, easy, not a big decision. You make it today, and a year later it catches up to you and it was a wrong decision. And it's taught me as I've gotten older that you need to stand back as an entrepreneur and analyze your decisions and make sure it's not seat of the pants, make sure maybe there's some facts involved, because I've been very guilty of that. And it kind of humbles you when you realize that decision that was a nothing you made a year ago is now a major wrong move in your business, and you just need to be a little more careful is all. Because I think the ultimate entrepreneur always feels like failure is not the option. I mean, they just want to talk about their ideas, and you start talking about, well, have you thought about this? Oh no, that'll never happen. And I think you need to back up a little bit. That's a tough one, because I think a typical manual shop, and my son is a good example, and Michael Fresener, my son, might see this, but my son's a good example of owner-operator. I talk to him almost daily on Skype, and usually he's doing artwork, he's reclaiming screens, he's got to set a job up, he's got to meet a customer, and it's usually back to doing the artwork and back to doing the artwork, fixing customers' bad art, doing artwork for nothing. And I think as an owner-operator, you get caught up in this taking every size order because you figure, okay, it's only 20 shirts, what the heck, I'll do it. And you take every size order, and you take any piece of junk artwork, and you don't charge for the art setup, or you just figure it's just the way it is. And I think you have to eventually decide, and I think you've gone through this with your company, you have to decide that here's going to be our minimums, here's what we're going to take, here's what we're not going to take, and we're going to walk from this stuff. And if it means walking from orders, which we know that maybe there'll be a big customer down the road, but we don't know that. And I think that the growth has to be then orderly, and you have to delegate that you are not going to be wearing every hat. You're going to be more managerial, maybe sales probably, because I think owner-operators typically fit into that category better. But I think you've got to have procedures, a SOP book, have systems in place, have it organized. I'm a Virgo, and Virgos are very organized. And so I always, everything, I'm a spreadsheet guy. I like the numbers, I like to crunch them, and I think that that's how business should be. But a lot of entrepreneurs are not into that at all. Again, a seat of pants, let's just see how it goes. So as you grow for your first automatic, you better have systems and procedures in place, and just be aware that you are not going to be the every guy to everything, and you start turning away jobs, taking jobs that are profitable for you. That's a good one, because over the years, at one time we had 90 employees, having hired a lot of employees, and typically I hired them all myself. I did the interviewing. I was very anal about that. Difficult. You hire somebody and you really don't know till they go to work. Now, I haven't had a lot of employees since Facebook has been so popular, so I am not from the era of looking at their Facebook page and following their posts, so I don't know what people do there. I know that I would probably want to kill them all with Facebook now, with people looking at their phones while they're working. I had a very low tolerance for people sitting there doing this, and I'm not sure how I deal with it now. But you've got to find people that I think are passionate. I probably I had support guys that always felt that it was the best job ever, but support guys I felt were the front line. They were the guys that people are going to talk to. I always tried to hire a non-nerdy. I looked at support thinking that the people that apply for that job will be more nerdy, more computer guys, but they probably won't have people skills. And I tried to get people that had people skills and that can relate to people. But I haven't got a great answer for that because I've hired and fired a lot. and I will say that I, on the similar topic, I was always quick to cut my losses, and maybe wrongly, but I felt like if I brought somebody in and after a few months they weren't listening to training, they weren't coachable, they just didn't quite fit in, I was not the guy to then go, well, let's continue to work with him. I was, and my employees, former would tell you, the ones that were with me till the end loved me. The ones, but there was some that the axe fell real quick. I thought, let's just move on. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a mistake.
Fire fast.
It may seem weird, but a mistake would be passing on a job that could be really a potential job. Passing because you're insecure, your shop isn't big enough, you don't think you can handle the order. To me, you know, I think that a lot of printers would say, well, I couldn't handle that order. Well, if you put on your thinking cap and you then found a person that did contract printing, you bought the goods, you controlled the separations, you had somebody else print it, but you got the job. You know, I think, but that would be the entrepreneur in me going, I'm going to take any job that's big and worthy. But I think a lot of guys pass on stuff. They just don't think they can do it. Or they don't even make a call to a big company because the big company wouldn't buy from them. And you know, it'd be something that they couldn't handle. Maybe they couldn't give them credit. I was never afraid to walk in a door and say, you know, I'm your guy, what can we do? Let's make this thing happen. And then worry about how to print the order later. Maybe that's a mistake. Well, the shirts would tell me their quality, and a lot of times when I do consulting, I might say, would you send me a couple of shirts first so I can see what you're doing? The cleanliness of the shop, the organization. I think the people, because you walk around when you consult, my buddy Richard Greaves is hanging out here behind us, and he's done a lot of consulting, I've done it. You walk into a shop and you immediately find out that maybe the problem is even the person that hired you. He brought you in to help clean things up and maybe get things going, and you find out that maybe he's the problem. Or maybe it's the screen room. You've got a stubborn screen maker who's been there for years. I was in a shop in Texas where I think the lady had been there 30 years and she was dictating mesh counts, and it was just, she was wrong, but she had been there so long that nobody had the guts to say, you know, it's time to get somebody else in here, because she was very organized and all that. But you walk into a shop and if it's really dirty and unorganized and not well kept, you know, you walk into an ink room and if it looks like you just splattered spaghetti everywhere, or it's nice and tidy, it tells you a whole lot about the company, about the pride of ownership, I think. And but the people, when you find people don't seem to care, they're not, you know, the catchers aren't really caring, you know, nobody really cares. The boss is a jerk, but the boss is always a jerk, you know, that a lot of times you're the bad guy no matter what. I have a different view on pricing. It will differ than with most people might differ with you. If you go onto the online Facebook groups and somebody asks a question about pricing, what's the response? Always, you have to know your own costs. You have to know what it costs to print a shirt in your shop. I disagree with that. And it's only because the market is dictating the price. You've got 50 shops in an area, they've all got their price, you've got customers everywhere, and if your shop is in a brand new building and you're driving a brand new car and your overhead is way high, and so you've got a price high because of all that, well then you're kind of doing it wrong. But I think the market dictates price. I mean, I have a feeling. You, I think, would disagree that maybe you need to know what it costs you to print a shirt and open your doors and how much it's going to cost you per hour to run your shop. But let's say a small shop who's he's not busy every day. He's busy now and then. He's doing 100 shirts here and 500 shirts there. It's hard to then peg a number on that. He may be too high for his overhead based on how many shirts he can print. So I have an attitude that you need to adjust your pricing and see where the market is. Now, I feel, and this will go against what people will say, I feel that your competition is often custom ink, got guys like that. Not that you need to compete with them, but those guys are driving what the customer sees. Do I pay for a screen? Do I not pay for a screen? Do I pay for art prep? Do I not pay for art prep? Oh, you're charging me for art prep. I can go online and get an art prep for free. Well, they're probably just tossing it in. They're getting covered for it, and maybe they're a little more money, but in the customer's mind, he's getting free art. And so I think the market tells you where the pricing needs to be within reason. I'm a fan of old school, because I'm an old guy. And I'm doing actually a marketing seminar here, I think on the third day. I think everybody wants to focus on social media and Instagram, and I'm okay with all of that. But if somebody goes to your website and they see it and they don't like it, maybe you've got your prices published and you're too high or too low, whatever, they don't tell you, they just don't come back. And I'm a big fan of FaceTime. I mean, going out, making calls, traditional marketing, and I think that you go after the accounts you want. So let's say you go to the mall and you sit there by the fountain and you watch people walk by, and what are you seeing? People wearing printed shirts. Well, that person, that company, ACY Air Conditioning Company, they're buying shirts from somebody. So there's a lead, and you go after companies you want to do work for. You're watching TV and you've got a guy at a car lot, pitching every 5 minutes on TV. He could be a good candidate. And so I think you have to look and earmark accounts you'd like to have, frankly, and go out, talk to them, leave them a shirt, go out and hound them. You have to build your pipeline. And so I think the average printer doesn't do that. I think you get locked into this business because you're owner-operator often to making screens and doing the art and fixing this file and doing this and doing that. And next thing you know, you haven't built your pipeline. So you've got to, I think, build your pipeline. But go after accounts you want. Just target them and think, how can I get this account? Oh, it's a hospital. I could never do their business. They'd never talk to me. I'm a small printer. How do you know that? Until you walk in and talk to, whether it be human resources for employee ID or somebody in promotions. How do you know that? Usually when I go into a shop and consult, it has to do with, it starts with art and separations and screens. And to me, the bottleneck starts with art and separations and screens because it's done poorly here, poor there, on press, and now teardowns, redos, remakes. No one pays you for that stuff. And I see that as a bottle in production from my point of view. Now, maybe a production guy floor on the floor might see the bottleneck in ink mixing, in order staging, all of that. But I see it when I go out is that it always starts with bad decisions made somewhere, and people dictating wrong mesh counts, screw ups. Of course, it goes back to typical things. Orders not written. I think everybody's now going to paperless, but there's still many shops who just write it on a note and it's got a thing and a few scribbles, and we aren't sure what we did it last time. It's a reorder, and how do we do it last time? Did we flash twice? What was the color last time? No documentation. And being the Virgo, that drives me nuts. You've got to document every job. So I think that's a bottleneck because there's all these questions and mistakes, and it just ends up being a mess. It's a tough question for me because I wrote a book called How to Print T-Shirts for Fun and Profit back in '79, 20 upgrades later. And the problem is that today people go to YouTube. And so used to be 8 or 9 years ago, I could meet a beginning screener and I knew, and it probably was good for my ego, I knew that if I said, how did you learn how to print? They'd say, I have your book. That doesn't happen anymore. Now you talk to somebody and you say, where'd you learn how to print? What do they say? YouTube. I'm not anti-YouTube, but there's a lot of stuff on there that's not great. And so that leads me to that my book is now, I've got it free, I'm giving it away. I couldn't sell hard copies, so it's out of print because nobody buys books anymore. So it's a little frustrating for me. But there's a lot of good YouTube out there. You can just type in how to make a screen in YouTube. You probably get 1,000 videos. And you've got guys showing you how to do it on a wood frame and guys showing you how to do a retentionable, and you've got the whole thing out there. I think trade shows are great because in trade shows, you're going to come and you're going to talk to guys like us, speakers who have been around the block, who the quality, the person, they're going to give you the straight scoop. And so just be aware, I think, of YouTube videos that you may be getting bad information. Even on some of the Facebook groups, as you know, some of the information there is iffy. Guys like me, we don't want to jump in and look like we're hey, that's wrong. But boy, I know a lot of us would like to go, hey, that isn't really how you do it, because you get people that have been printing for 6 months giving advice to a guy that's been printing for a month. And it's a little frustrating, and so you've got to just be a little careful of that. It's a tough one because I think that there's still value in reading from a book, but the world doesn't read from a book anymore. They want to go to YouTube.